Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Wednesday webinar. As everybody is populating into our webinar today, we would love to have you tell us where you're from, where you're coming from, where you're listening to us. I myself am in Alpharetta, Georgia, and so it is chilly today, but we're looking forward to having our chat. So please, as everybody is populating in our chat room here from the waiting room, please tell us where you're from, say hello, and where you're coming from today. We are glad you're here. So thank you again for spending your hour with us today for our Wednesday webinar series. My name is Alice Fox, and I am the Director of Talent Delivery at Talent Connections. A few housekeeping items for us today is that this is a 1-hour webinar. And Joe, if you could take it to the next slide for me. This is a 1-hour recorded webinar. If you have any technical questions, please feel free to email me at Alice, ALLIS, Fox at talentconnections.net. Participants will be muted. However, please feel free to use the question and answer feature to submit questions, or definitely in the chat. Let's use the chat to be as interactive as possible, and I can ask Joe any questions as we go along. So please feel free to, as a question comes up, to put it in the chat for us. This webinar is approved for 1 SHRM Professional Development credit, and the activity code will be given at the conclusion of the webinar. Today, I am pleased to introduce Joe Murphy. I actually had the pleasure of being able to hear Joe Murphy speak at the Foothills of Georgia SHRM chapter meeting in Gainesville several months ago. And after I heard him speak, I thought, he'd be great for our webinar. So I'm so glad he agreed to join us today. Joe is a former senior executive with leadership experience across multiple Fortune 50 and Fortune 1000 companies. He has over 30 years of business and leadership experience in industries including IT services, consulting, technology, and more. His business career spans numerous executive management leadership roles, including business strategy, turnarounds, organizational change management, sales leadership, and P&L operations across the United States, Europe, and Asia. Joe is the founder and facilitator of the Leadership Academy, the author of 5 books, which he's been so kind to provide each of you with a copy of at the end of the webinar, on personal development, leadership, and strategy, and a keynote speaker and high performance coach. He is the CEO and managing director at CrossCurrent, a leadership development and organizational design firm. He is a graduate of the University of South Carolina, and we are so happy to have him join us today. So thank you so much to everyone for joining us, and Joe, take it away.
Thank you very much, Alice. I appreciate it. And I see a lot of familiar names from LinkedIn and some of my clients. And I want to say thank you all for joining. And I hope you find this not only informative, but a little bit entertaining, just so that those of you who have not met me before, or been on my program before, I try to make this as lively as possible. Please feel free to use the chat. And anytime I'll be looking at the chat, Alice also helped me because I sometimes get wrapped into what I'm saying. This is about leaders at all levels. It's something that I believe in strongly. I wish this was a term that I came up with, but it's been out in the market for a number of years. But we really do a poor job of creating leaders at all levels throughout the world. I know there's some people from all over the world. I see some names from as far away as Turkey. I'm glad everyone is here and appreciate it. Again, it's my honor to walk you through this, what I would call hopefully an informative session, but also make it a little bit fun. All right, so here's what we're looking at today. Is the agenda. Why isn't the top-down model no longer working? What are the benefits of leaders at all levels? How is leadership or leaders at all levels, how does it drive performance? What are the 3 phases of building a culture where everyone takes ownership? And I think that's the key word, ownership. Ownership doesn't mean partnership. It doesn't mean stock ownership. It means taking ownership of jobs, and we'll get into that later. And then why is leadership at all levels, why can it be a market differentiator? And then last, What is the secret sauce behind leaders at all levels, and how can you all steal it or use it? And I'm going to, if we have enough time, I'm going to walk you through some of the things that you can do in your organization that has helped my clients develop leaders at all levels, and I'll show you the secret sauce. And and if time permits, and if it doesn't, we'll figure out Allison and I will figure out a way to get you more information. All right, this is a quote from McKinsey and Company, but it's also a quote from a survey that was done by MIT. Okay, also at Sloan Business School. We'll talk about that. Traditional top-down leadership models no longer work effectively, especially in the world that's rapidly changing with AI coming about. It's even taking a more important role that we push down leaders at all levels. And I'm going to leaders at all levels, and making people on the front line accountable is not the right word, but responsible for driving results, and by giving them the tools and empowering them with the authority to make decisions or effective decisions as quickly as possible, and also get as close to the customer as possible as well. I'm going to be talking about 2 case studies that I have to help back up some of the things that I have found to work, and answer any questions that you may have. All right, so let's get into this. Let's talk some statistics. Let's talk what's working and what's not working and why. 1 in 3 employees feel like they're engaged. This is from some work done by Gallup Research. The numbers are holding true today in 2025. 1 out of 3 employees are looking for other work. So this means that only 1 out of 3 is engaged. Okay. And this is not sustainable. Here's another statistic I pulled from a friend of mine on LinkedIn. 92% of millennials consider a sense of purpose critical to their job satisfaction and well-being. And then I looked up where it came from, and it came from Deloitte's 2025 Gen Z and Millennial Survey. So this whole point about consider a sense of purpose critical to your job satisfaction and well-being, I'm going to tie this to leaders at all levels, and you'll see how I do this in a second. But let's go into some of the other aspects that I think is important. And that's not enough ready now leaders. There's going to be a great retirement of the generation that I'm part of. And there's going to be a lot of openings, but right now, currently, executives feel like that only 40% of managers are ready to step into leadership roles, executive leadership roles. And we're not doing enough to train and develop our current managers or people who want to get into management. So this idea of leaders at all levels starts with this diagram, and it's a diagram that you'll see throughout the presentation, that we can't have enough leaders. And what we're going to find is that leaders at all levels hits 3 things. 1, we see higher engagement levels, which results in higher profitability. And you'll hear this number, 21%. You'll see this again and again, because with higher engagement levels, according to Gallup, organizations that have high levels of engagement have higher levels of profitability. The number 2 benefit is people have more a sense of purpose, a sense of well-being, which results in lower employee turnover. And of course, number 3 is once we start putting or cascading leadership at all levels, we have a pipeline of ready now leaders to move forward. Higher engagement leads to 21% higher profitability and meaningful work and purpose. Employees, when they find meaningful work and have a purpose, they're 294% more likely to stay, which means that turnover rate decreases quite substantially. And if you compare this to fair pay, this term idea of fair play, only 54% are likely to stay. So the translation means, or translation, meaning beats money by 5 times. So again, this idea of engagement, giving people purpose, giving people meaning, is really about how do we create more leaders so that they have at every level a sense of purpose and well-being, but also a sense of ownership, a sense of responsibility. And this is the critical aspect. All right, here's a question that I'd like for you all to answer and put your answers into the chat if you would. What is your role as a manager? Develop your people, get results, look at email all day.
I think people think they have to look at email all day, but I don't think that's what they should do all day.
No, I
But
think
yeah,
you're right, Alice. I see people looking at email. In fact, they'll look at email when somebody's sitting right in front of them.
yes. It's and the younger generation, that Gen Z too, that's what I try to talk with younger people about, being just, on their phones all the time. And they're like, well, I'm listening. And I said, well, that's not the same as being engaged as when you're listening. It doesn't look like you're listening. So here we're having getting results by developing people. Someone says A, develop your people. Diane says A to achieve B. So those are the results we're getting. A leads to B.
This group, I'm just going to turn the PowerPoint over to them. This is really good, really good.
Got some sharp people here.
Very sharp people. All right. All right. For those of you who are afraid to answer, let's go to the answers, please. Okay. Now, if I reframe this question, all right, if I reframe this question, this would stand out for those of you who are looking at maybe just B, but nobody said B. So is develop your people to get results. It's not get results by myself. I know a lot of managers, and I was one of them. I used to say, get results. That's my job. And I did. And the problem was I wasn't developing my people. I made colossal mistakes back 20 years ago when I was doing turnarounds. It was to get results. There wasn't enough time to develop people. So I had to hire people with a lot more experience, but it would have been easier if I would have taken the time to develop the people to get the results. And so I, Joe Murphy, made this mistake. So here's my attempt at AI here. So here's AI. Believe it or not, this is AI. I used Grok. If the people are familiar with X and Elon Musk, he's got something called Grok, and he has an AI tool. So that was it. That's about the most fun you're going to get out of me today. All right, so let's take this methodology. What's the best way to develop your people? This one might be a little bit harder to answer.
I've had lots of B, Joe. I've had lots of B and of managers before, and never gets the results. That 294% more likely to stay. That was the B is the problem.
Yes.
So yeah, everybody is saying in our chat.
Yeah. Absolutely. I used to
You
use the
see,
sink or swim methodology, hire them, throw them at the work. I read that in a book one time. It was a sink or swim methodology. Micromanaging people is probably one of the biggest things that stand in our way to achieving C. And let me try to explain that. We are as leaders, managers, or you all as leaders, are not you all specifically, because I can tell the group that we have on here knows the right things to do, but what stands in the way from people coaching and training and inspiring people is they're afraid that might come across as micromanaging, and that's what sometimes stands in the way. We don't like micromanagers, and we don't want to be seen as one, so we tend to step away and not help people become better at their jobs. But this aspect of coaching and training and inspiring them and using those terms really help. I just finished a call with a group executives. There were about 19 executives on from a client of mine, and we were talking about this very thing. And if we get a chance to go into it this afternoon, this morning or this afternoon, wherever you're calling from, for most people, it's this afternoon. It's this answer, of course. So, what if you could pour everything you know into your people's head? What would you do it? Would you do it? And I tell when I'm coaching people, I use this term, if you just could pour everything in, and it really gets people, managers, to think a little bit differently.
As people are answering in the chat, I'll say it's so interesting that as you grow in your career, and when I did manage people and manage a team in a prior life, I had to realize, because I'm a perfectionist, I like things to be done, and I had it in my head what I thought it would need to be, but that doesn't mean it has to be that way. And it doesn't mean that that's not how they're doing it is not incorrect. So I like to, that's what makes the world go round, is everybody's different perspectives, for sure.
Absolutely. And we're getting a couple different answers here,
Yeah.
their own experience. One of the things that I always say is, yes, try to give everything that you know, and if you can figure out a way to pour it into someone else's head and let them to adopt it or adapt it to their own way of working, you'd be surprised how much you all as leaders know but don't know you know. And I want to encourage you to give all you've got to your people and pour it into their heads. And it doesn't have to mean that they do it exactly like you. It just means that they become more aware of it. So try to do this first. And when you start to do this, of course, what you're doing here is creating leaders at all levels. If you could pour everything that you know in, and especially this group here, let me tell you, this would have a resounding effect. Now you might say, well, it's going to take a long time because I know a lot. But I think if you write down and codify what you know and start coming up with some ideas as to what others could be doing to improve themselves based upon what you have learned or experienced, you will become an excellent leader. You become an even better leader than you are today. You do know a lot, and you should trust your instincts and just figure out, by writing it down on paper, codify it, the things that you know that you wish you would have known. Just start there. All right, I've got Steve Jobs here, one of my favorite videos, and he's going to go into this, because as leaders, you have to have passion and energy and to be surrounded by great people. Let's just talk.
People say you have to have
rewind this a minute.
People say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing, and it's totally true. And the reason is because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up.
I'm pausing it here. Everybody can hear this, right? Hopefully.
Yes, I can hear it fine.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Alex.
Yep.
It's really hard, and you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, if you're not having fun doing it, and you don't really love it, you're going to give up. And that's what happens to most people, actually. If you really look at the ones that ended up being successful, unquote, in the eyes of society, and the ones that didn't, oftentimes it's the ones that are successful loved what they did so they could persevere when it got really tough. And the ones that didn't love it quit because they're sane, right? Who would want to put up with this stuff if you don't love it? So it's a lot of hard work, and it's a lot of worrying constantly. And if you don't love it, you're going to fail. So you got to love it. You got to have passion. And I think that's the high order bit. The second thing is you've got to be a really good talent scout, because no matter how smart you are, you need a team of great people, and you've got to figure out how to size people up fairly quickly, make decisions without knowing people too well, and hire them, and see how you do, and refine your intuition, and be able to help build an organization that can eventually just build itself, because you need great people around you.
All right, so I'm going to move forward to my definition of leadership here. It's a series of actions or behaviors that inspires others to become their best selves on the way to the objective. And this definition of leadership has nothing to do with title. You don't see the word manager in here, but this is my definition. It's one I've come to that I use all the time in my leadership classes, because you don't have to be a manager to be a leader. You can be inspired by somebody who is part of your team that makes you or compels you to become your best self on the way toward an objective. And I think this is critical. One of the things that I point out here, and this is a great example, it's the geese that always fly in formation. And what happens is the lead goose is not the leader. The leader is back here, typically in the formation, to make sure everybody is flying in the formation and making sure that the rotation from the front, believe it or not, the geese actually change the role of the front, so that when the first goose gets tired, he or she gets to the back. And I think this is a critical example. Is the leader out front or in the back? And the answer is sometimes both, depending on what's necessary. And so this is where leaders at all levels come in, because the geese is the perfect metaphor of becoming a leader at all levels. They take turns based upon the strength of the flock. I've got a great video here, but we're going to be pressed for time.
I think that
move forward here. True or false? Leaders develop other leaders, and everybody knows that this is true. Leaders know that leaders develop other leaders. There but there's not enough time. I'm going to implore you again, going back to taking out what you do know and codifying it and developing your team into other leaders. It takes a little bit of courage. Well, it takes a lot of courage and confidence. But when you understand that you have competencies, that'll help you with your confidences. This is a quote from Tom Peters from years ago. Great leaders create more great leaders, or create more leaders. They don't create more followers. All right, here's Joe Murphy, this dapper person, and he's going to talk about the 3 tiers to leadership. And this is from managed to leadership. It's the critical part that I think makes all the difference here.
Hi, Joe Murphy here. I want to draw a diagram that I think is going to be important in terms of leaders at all levels. I'm going to draw an X and Y chart, and along the Y axis, this is the motivation. And I'm going to just write motivation. And across the bottom, the X axis, this is about leadership or inspiration. The more somebody leads somebody, the more they're inspired. So this chart goes X and Y. Motivation, inspired. Here is leadership. Okay, can you see that? Here is managed. A person feels managed down here. Less motivation, less inspired. And I've got 3 different levels or categories that I want to walk you through as quickly as possible. This bottom level is what I call accountability. Let's just write down A for accountability. This is where the person feels managed. He or she waits to be told what to do. Okay? They don't take actions themselves. They are told what to do. And they're accountable. I don't like the word accountable, primarily because it feels like it's being done to you. I like the term taking responsibility, which I'll show you when you develop leaders at all levels, what happens. The second level, we'll call this psychological safety. PS. It's another term I don't really like, but every organization should have their people feel psychologically safe, a psychologically safe environment where they can express themselves. This is where the people start collaborating with each other to get results. They're sort of in between this being accountable, being told what to do, but starting to initiate actions themselves. And then finally, what I call ownership, or it could be empowered. This is where people, let's just call it ownership, people take responsibility for results. And this is the key thing. Results, results, results. They feel like they're part of a winning organization where they're no longer managed, they're inspired, where they have leadership, and they start modeling leadership behaviors. And what happens is, as you go up here, this little chart, people start feeling more engaged. They start getting more productive. They start working together. HR takes, instead of a referee role, a coaching role to move people up into this upper decks. Okay, what also happens is performance goes across this way. And performance, as I mentioned earlier, increases. The other thing that happens on this is a psychological factor. Now, see if I can't move this camera angle. Psychological factor, going from low to high. People feel that they're self-reliant. They start relying on themselves. They collaborate, but they know they're responsible for their own work, and they're responsible to the team, which is up here. Does this make sense? This is leadership at all levels. And you go through accountability, psychological safety, up here to ownership and results, and people feel empowered. They like coming to work. They leap out of bed. And the second thing or third thing or fourth thing that happens is they start taking their own accountability for their own self-development to be part of a team. You see, going to work down here is an 8 to 5 kind of thing. I have to go to work. Up here is I'm developing myself. I have a growth mindset. I'm becoming everything I can possibly become. And this is the difference. This is leadership at all levels. And you can walk people through these 3 stages by having a leadership development program and managers that know how to coach people for high performance. Thanks for watching.
All right, I hope that made sense. Are any questions about that from anyone? So this is the 3 tiers, and I'll come back to that in just a second here. This is called the crooked picture in the hallway of the office. What do you do? And so using that model that I just showed you, that from managing, inspiration, and all over here, high leadership, to feeling high motivated, pressure to perform. Okay, this person who's at a level 1, or the person who's managing people and not developing the people. So people come into work and this is what they feel like. I see the crooked picture and I walk past it. It's not my job. Okay. The second level here, this is where people collaborate. The psychologically safety starts to occur. They feel safe, which all organizations I feel should be creating psychological safety. I see the crooked picture. I walk past it. It's not my job. I wonder whose job it is. I tell somebody about it. So they do something about it. Ownership is this. I see the crooked picture. It's not my job. I wonder whose job it is. I realize it's my job. I straighten it out. This is a simple vehicle that shows how leadership at all levels starts to occur when we get to that level 3 of what I call ownership, or even empowerment. It's totally engaging. So now at the engagement level, it starts to be high, as I pointed out. Performance improves. The person becomes more self-reliant instead of dependent on the right-hand side. And when you're feeling self-reliant, you're feeling good about yourself, like you can do all sorts of things and the organization starts to become a high performance culture where people are collaborating together, working for each other's, helping each other become successful. This is where servant leadership pops in, by the way, because it becomes, instead of all about me, which is more down here, it becomes more about us. And we give more than we take, and people feel good about helping each other become successful. And again, it becomes a place where people want to work, and people start telling others about coming to work for this organization, and they start telling where management should grab this person. He would fit, or she would fit, into our culture, and it becomes a differentiator out in the marketplace, because now you're hiring the best people who get along with others, who want to create something bigger than itself. Now, I went through this rather quickly because there's a number of other things that come about. There should be a vision, there should be values, there should be all sorts of things. But I want to get to these next couple of slides because I think this is important. And this is done by MIT Sloan School of Business. And they came up with they did a study on looking at organizations and looking at leaders at all levels. And they came up with one of the key findings: distributed leaders foster innovation, agility, employee engagement, and a better organizational performance by unlocking the collective intelligence and potential of the workforce. I'm going to get into the second key finding in just a minute, but I want to talk to you about this organization. This is GE Appliances, and they did this leaders at all levels. And the CEO implemented this, and the result was GE Appliances jumped from which is a boring business, by the way. It's washing machines and dishwashers, or it seems like it's a boring business, but they actually made it exciting, and they grew from number 4 spot to number 1. And this is how they did it. They did 4 specific things. I'm going to go through each one of these rather quickly and I can get into more detail if you'd like. They went from zero distance. They called this zero distance, or CEO called it the zero distance. Went from customer to innovator, so that they're closest to the customer. And Ken Nolan says this: management must get out of the way. The customer's the boss. There should be zero distance between the innovators and the customer. And I have found from personal experience, when I first started off in management, I was giving authority to go run a remote office with about 80 people in it in my 20s. And we quadrupled the business within 2 years. And then we tripled that amount within 4 years, because we were given the autonomy to try new things. And we made sure all of us were closest to the customer. I was running an IT organization. I'd say IT organization, a technology organization that delivered software, hardware, and services at the time. And all the people that, I say all the people, I ran an office of 80, but only had 4 direct reports. But each one of those 4 direct reports wound up becoming leaders of different organizations. So we all grew and were promoted. True ownership, and this is something else that GE Appliances did. And what they did here is that they created micro enterprises. That is, they brought profit and loss statements right down to its lowest level possible, and got closest to the customer, and tied the P&L of each individual micro enterprise to compensation tied to performance. The third thing that they did is they were looking for innovation without bureaucracy. And they did things at the local level where things weren't floated up to the top. I mean, Nolan gives a great example here of in one of his of where 3 employees took an RV van and they wrapped it with all GE appliance material, so that they went to the seminars with this big GE van. And they didn't ask permission, they just did it. They spent $300 and they expensed it to do a wrap around the RV van. And then last, tap into street smarts. And he says, are you the smartest person in the room? And if you are, you have a massive disadvantage because you're not tapping the smarts of the organization. The smart people are the ones closest to the customer. So that's, this is very high level, 4 things that they did. I want to tap into another organization that changed the way they did business. And this is an organization that I'm really familiar with in a lot of detail, and I can't say who they are. I don't have permission. But these leaders shifted the command and control down to coaching roles, balancing autonomy with alignment to business objectives. And what they did was for their case study, they put in leaders at all levels. But here's how they did it. Instead of HR being what they typically are, handling problems all day long or problem employees, they separated the problem of identifying what the challenges are, what complaints are, and they put a separate organization in place that handled all those globally. And so all the complaints or any kind of problems where there might be a lawsuit involved, which just diverts the entire organization to a central location. And this organization took the rest of the people and created coaches to all the people in the organization and looked for ways to make each person on the business unit that they supported better at what they did in terms of, and I don't like the term soft skills, but into leadership skills and being leaders at all levels, so that it became a force multiplier. And so, as I pointed out, so what happens to all the complaints that typical HR people have to handle? Again, that's handled by a separate organization. It becomes like a call center, and they become really good. They became, and it's going, they are in their, I think, 7th month of doing this now. And it's changed the dynamics of the whole organization to where the folks that are getting things done, it's shifted and it's made them better leaders at the top, but also created a leadership type environment where people are getting the work done closest to the client or closest to the customers and getting things that need to be elevated in terms of growth mindset and going to classes on these people's development list. Change the whole dynamic. All right, so what do I want to show here? Is this, now let's skip this time, we're running out of time. So this is the secret sauce that I use with my organizations that I said I wanted to get to. So the secret sauce, I'm just going to tell you what I do, and you can do it in your organization. So it's as simple as training people on how to run meetings. You know, a lot of organizations haven't taught people how to run a meeting, to servant leadership, and I get it's complex. There's a whole bunch of different classes that I teach. That's number one. I use something called 90-minute sprints. So one of the things that people always get a little bit shaky about is going to class for 2 full days and taking them out of the field. What I have found, what my clients have found, and they agree, I've got some clients that I work with that do 60-minute sprints with their leadership team. And they do it. I have one client that does it once a week. I have one client that does it once a month. I have a client that I work with that does 90-minute training sprints for all of their employees. And we hit it. We have a topic each week. And I don't know if I have any of my clients on here. Are any of my clients on here? Just if you want to volunteer, just by putting in the chat saying yes. I invited them to come, but I don't recognize. I do recognize 1 or 2 names, and you might not. If you want to identify yourself, that would be great. Anyway, but this is what I do, and I have these classes go worldwide. By the way, I have people in Kuwait, I have people in the UK, and we try to we have people from all over. And what this turns into, by the way, one more thing. I have vice presidents and I have first-time managers and I have people who are on the call that are not managers. And what we do is we facilitate the call. I facilitate the call and have them speak. What I do is show videos. I don't know if I've created this. Yeah, I do. I show videos of different thought leaders on the specific topic. It's like a 5-minute clip. This is something you all can do and open it up to conversation. And these clips based upon the topic are really easy to do and run. In fact, you just saw me do that with my own clips. So it's something that we've done. And I've been doing this. I've got over 65,000 attendees. They've done this for over 600 sessions. It grew out of one organization where they asked me, can you teach leadership classes? The person who asked me to do this during COVID, they said, we have all these people sitting home. Can you teach leadership classes to our people? And I didn't do this before, but I saw an opportunity, not for me, but for the organization by showing these video clips. And it turned into a regular thing. And now I'm doing it on my own. And again, it can be done remotely. I did this. I was on vacation in Prague. I did it back to the United States. I did it from a Starbucks in Prague because in my hotel, the hotel lost the internet half an hour before my class was going to start, my 90-minute class back in the US. So I had to run to Starbucks, and I wound up running up a hill to get to the Starbucks on a hill in Prague. And it had the most spectacular views of all of Prague that I have ever seen. And it was one of these moments you don't know if it's going to work or not. Had like 150 people on the call, and you're going, oh boy, I hope I can get the internet to work. But you can do this from anywhere, okay? And it's very simple. And then last, let me give you this. This is a class that I just went over. For coaching people, one of the first things I tell people to be a good coach is use feed forward. It's not about what went wrong in the past. It's about what to do in the future. And instead of saying, this is what you did wrong, say, try this the next time. And what happens is you're painting a picture, what I call nirvana, or, rainbows and unicorns, so that the other person can see that what you're trying to get done as well. And so feed forward is a great tool. I have a whole session on this one. Let me know, and engage people. This is a critical thing in the classes, is when you engage people and use these videos, and unfortunately we're going to run out of time, it becomes a really different way of taking a class and facilitating it. And I've got some comments here from people who have attended the class. This was my favorite one. I'm a little dyslexic. At first, I thought they said Joe Murphy is a rock. And I was like, wow, that was kind of insulting. And then I said, oh, could motivate a rock. And so that's something that I've used in the past. All right. I'm going to stop here. I don't think, Alice, that anybody can open up their microphones, though, can they, I guess, huh?
Yeah, no, everyone is muted, but if you do have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and ask Joe. It's the time now. Also, I will be sending out, as we mentioned earlier, a copy of Joe's PDF to Joe's book. Which one is it called? What's the title of it, Joe?
This is called Climbing the Leadership Summit, Creating Leaders at All Levels.
Perfect. Well, everyone will be getting a copy of that PDF to that book. So we appreciate you providing that for us, Joe. Also, everyone who, if you were like me, were feverishly writing notes, you will get also, for attending, a copy, a link to this webinar, the recording of this webinar, so you can look back and see anything else And as I said, I actually met Joe and first heard him speak at the foothills of Georgia SHRM chapter meeting and learned a lot at that meeting as well. So always great to get new nuggets of information. Please, as I said, if you do have any questions, you can either put them in the chat here, or you can put it in the, actually do a question and answer at the bottom as well. I'll tell you one thing that, Joe, that is kind of struck me is when you said 92% of millennials consider sense of purpose critical, and then the statistic that is really staggering is the 294% more likely to stay when they find meaning in their work. I'll tell you that last Friday, you know, I talk on the phone or on meetings all day to candidates or potential candidates. And the number one thing that everybody said to me that they were looking for, because I always ask what they want to be when they grow up. And the number one thing they said to me was they want to be in a good culture. They said they're tired of getting on the elevator and not allowed to look at or make eye contact with the CEO, which I thought was interesting, because considering especially the GE statistics and study that you showed us as well. The second number two thing that they said is they want to work for a good leader. So I mean, they didn't say money. They want, you know, $200,000. They didn't say they want to have a title of VP of HR or CHRO. That was their first two. Every single person I talked to last Friday, that's what they said to me. One was the culture, a good culture, and two was to work for a good leader. So I think that's very interesting for sure. So Anita says, looking forward to meet you in person potentially soon at an event. I would be more than happy if you could join us, Joe.
I know Anita. Thank you, Anita. Thank you for joining. And,
so thank you everybody for joining us today. A little bit about in our Wednesday webinar series, a little information about who we are. Talent Connections is a human resource executive search and consulting firm located in Atlanta, Georgia. We were founded in 1999, so we are starting our 26th year and have spent over 2 decades perfecting our craft in HR services while creating thousands of transformative connections. Our sister company is called Career Spa, and it provides career transition and coaching services tailored to each individual to help you discover your career path and secure an advantage in this evolving job market, if that is not the truth for sure. The activity code for our SHRM Professional Development credit for recertification through SHRM is, you can see it there on your screen, it is 25-FEXFZ. So be sure to note the activity ID number on your recertification application form, and this is good for one professional development credit. Then remember to mark your calendars for our next Wednesday webinar, which will be Wednesday, December the 10th. And we have a special guest. Ian Ziskin will actually be here to promote and talk to us about his new book. So we're very excited about that as well. So at this time, it seems like we do not have any questions, Joe, but thank you so much for your time. Really appreciated your time and your insights and all kinds of different statistics and ways to lead for sure. And we appreciate your time and everyone for joining us on our Wednesday webinar today.
Well, thank you very much, Alice, for hosting me. And thank you all for attending. It's good to see you all again. If I can ever be of assistance to any one of you, never hesitate to reach out to me. In the book, you will see my contact information. But most of you, some of you are on LinkedIn with me. And if you're not on LinkedIn, just don't hesitate to link in with me, and you can get in direct contact with me at any time. I appreciate everybody's attendance. Alice, once again, thank you for hosting this. And I hope you all found it not only beneficial and informative, but also hopefully a little bit of fun. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much, Joe. Everyone have a great day. Bye-bye.